Hello, I am Sourabh Verma. Russia-Ukraine war is going on for the last few months. This war came just after the setback of the COVID-19 pandemic on the world economy. So, we have seen the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the world economy, where because of lockdown and due to severe restrictions on the economic and transport of goods from one place to another, the economy has already suffered much. And this war came just after the COVID 19 pandemic. So, one big question which arises is, does Russia Ukraine war is actually hurting our economy, or whether Russia Ukraine war is the real reason why our economy is suffering? The financial impact of this war is, firstly, the global crude oil prices will continue to rise. We all know that Russia is one of the biggest producers of global crude oil. So if Russia enters into war, the global crude oil prices is going to rise. This is natural. Secondly, this war will fuel uncertainties about recovery of global economy. So the global economy, which is already reeling from the setback of the COVID-19 pandemic, just after that the war comes, and so the uncertainty about the recovery of the global economy has increased due to this war. The three major sectors which will be worst affected because of this war are automobile, transport and chemicals. This war has been going on for some time, and the end of this war is nowhere in sight, as despite Russia's strong offensive against Ukraine, the Ukrainians are also putting up a stout defense. We all know that Russia is one of the largest producers of crude oil and natural gas in the world. So as the prices of the crude oil and natural gas is increasing due to war, what is happening is that the commodity prices are going to be high for some time to come. On the other hand, the imports will also become expensive. So the commodity prices are rising because of higher natural gas and crude oil prices, and it will further increase the inflation, and imports will also be expensive, and imports costs will also increase. All these factors will contribute to inflation. Inflation will continue for a very long time, and this long-term inflation will lead to stagflation and social unrest in various parts of the world. Now, as the natural gas prices are increasing, the prices of fertilizers are also increasing. The fertilizer industry requires natural gas, and when the natural gas prices increase, the cost of the fertilizers also increase, so prices of the fertilizers also increase. And when the prices of the fertilizers increase, this affects the whole agri-food sector. The prices of all the food items will increase. Russia is also the largest producer of wheat in the world. And on the other hand, Ukraine is also a top producer of sunflower in the world, which is one of the ingredients of edible oil. Ukraine is also among the top producers of corn and wheat. So as a consequence, the prices of imports, especially in the energy and the food imports, are increasing and will going to increase in the future also. The second question which arises is how war is affecting major economies. If we want to know the real impact of the war on the financial sector, we need to know how the economies of different countries are faring in this scenario. So for instance, Russia's economy will face recession at the rate of 7.5%. This is due to because of extensive economic sanctions on Russia. We all know that United States, US, Canada, European countries, Australia, all of these countries have imposed extensive economic sanctions on Russia. This is bringing down the Russian currency ruble. So the value of the ruble is going to be low, it's going to come down in the near future. And it is predicted that by the end of 2022, Russia's economy will enter into a stage of deep recession. This will be a period of great difficulty for the Russian economy. Russia's economy will shrink by 11.2% in 2022. Moreover, Ukraine's economy will also shrink by 45.1% in 2022. Russia's economy will go back by at least 30 years. So there will be a 30 years economic setback for Russia. So if these predictions come true, that Russia's economy is going to shrink by 11.2% in 2022 and Ukraine's economy shrink by 45.1% in 2022, these predictions, if they come true in the near future, it will have a deleterious impact on the rest of the world also. Russia's risk assessment ratings has also been downgraded. There are agencies which are giving risk assessment ratings to different countries. So they have downgraded Russia's risk assessment rating from B to D. It was earlier B and now it was downgraded to D. Both Ukraine and Russia's economy will suffer as a result of this war. The more the war lingers on, the more devastating will be its effect on the economies of these two countries. Now, if we have to consider the economic impact on various economies of the world, we need to see it one by one. So, we have seen the impact of the war on Russia and Ukraine's economy. Now, we have to see what will be the impact of war on emerging economies and Asian economies like India and China. So, as per the report of the Moody's is a global rating agency. Moody's report says that the war will derail the Indian economy. So, its report about the Indian economy does not paint a rosy picture. Since the war, the Indian stock markets already crashed by 72,000 points. So there is a decline of 72,000 points in the Indian stock market. And almost 7.5 lakh crores of investors' money is wiped out of the market. Why Indian economy is suffering because of this war? It is suffering because of India's dependency on Russian imports. India is heavily dependent on imports from Russia. India imports fuel, precious stones, mineral oil, fertilizers, machinery and whatnot from Russia. Thus, Indian economy will be in a delicate position because of the war. Russia is also a major supplier of fertilizers to India. So, when the prices of the fertilizers will increase, the prices of the food commodities in India will also increase. This will further breed inflation and cuts down the demand. RBI is already tightening its monetary policy to control inflation in India. But this move does not seem appropriate because this will further dampen the investor sentiment in India. The investor sentiment in India is already low. There is low investment and low growth. In both the parameters of growth and investment, India is not faring well. So if RBI tightens the monetary policy, it will further dampen the investor sentiment and further curtail down the investment in India. So due to market disruptions because of the war, the Indian economic growth will slow down. High fuel prices will trigger long-term inflation in India. Supply chain disruptions, high crude oil prices, hostility with China, all these factors are negatively affecting our economy and they are contributing to decline in our economy. As far as the hostilities with China is concerned, the Western countries are more reluctant to invest in India because they feel that if a war like Russia-Ukraine breaks down between India and China, their investment will be of no value and will be reduced to ashes. So most of the Western countries in this time of hostility with China is not forthcoming about investment in India. They are proceeding with greater caution as far as the investment in India is concerned. So all these factors are contributing to decline in our economy. China, on the other hand, will continue to grow because of several parameters in which it is faring well. China has a strong financial base, it has a robust manufacturing sector, and it has one of the largest foreign exchange reserves in the world. All these factors and its low dependency on imports from abroad, all these factors are contributing to the fact that China's economy will continue to grow and will remain stable in the near future. Now, we have seen the impact of the war on Russia and India. We have seen the impact of war on China. We have seen the impact of the war on Ukraine. Now, what about small economies like small countries with fairly low foreign exchange reserves, with almost no foreign direct investment? How these countries are going to fare in this time of war? We have seen the example of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has now entered a phase of default in debt, and it's now a crisis-ridden country. It has nothing to offer to its citizens and it's now almost on the survival mode. Similar is the case of Pakistan. The economy of Pakistan has completely collapsed. It is somehow barely hanging on the IMF loans, some Gulf remittances and some donations from Arab countries. Similar is the case with Tunisia. So all these economic consequences for smaller countries are more grave. Their economies are not faring well, and most of these countries' economies are collapsing because of the war. War is a major contributing factor for the collapse of their economies. On the other hand, corruption and other factors also count, but war also contributes to that. Now, what will be the impact of war on global GDP growth? As per the rating agency JP Morgan, global GDP growth will be 2.3% annually for this year. So if the global GDP growth is valued at 2.3% annually, it's way below the earlier forecasts. JP Morgan also opined that the global inflation will be 7.1% annually for this year. So it is also way above the earlier forecast. What is happening is that Russia accounts for 10% of the global oil and natural gas production. So when this production comes down, it will ultimately bring down the global growth, and investment scenario also dampens. So the global growth is slowing down because of disruption in the energy supply. Inflation is also going to increase by 1.5 percentage points in 2022. This will further erode the household consumption and investment, and growth both will come down. So once the household consumption comes down, the demand is reduced, both the investment and the growth will also come down with it. Thus the GDP growth will decrease by 1 percentage point and will eventually come down to zero on a global level. I have earlier talked about the fact that the three sectors which are worst affected as a result of this war are automobile, transport and chemicals. Ukraine supplies spare parts to most of the major car manufacturers in Europe. So because of the war, these factories in Ukraine are shut down. They are no longer in production. So they are not able to supply spare parts to the car manufacturers of Europe. And as a result, these major car manufacturers in Europe are forced to shut down their plants. They are already facing an electronic chip shortage because of China-Taiwan tensions. And once the Russia-Ukraine war breaks out and there is shortage of spare parts, most of these car manufacturers are forced to shut down their plants or to curtail their production. As far as the transport is concerned, due to war, air routes and maritime routes are closed because of military blockade. All the warring factions are imposing military blockades on each other. Russia has imposed military blockade on Western countries and Western countries has imposed military blockade on Russia. So if we take this military blockade of airline routes and maritime freight routes into account with the rising fuel prices, what is happening is most of the carriers who are carrying cargoes from one place to another are taking a longer route because of the military blockade of the maritime routes and also airline routes. So most of these freight carriers are taking a longer route, and coupled with the rising fuel prices, the cost of transports will substantially increase. So because of rising cost in transport, the transport sector is one of the worst affected sector as a result of this war. The chemical sectors is also worst affected because of this war. Russia is one of the prime producers of fertilizers like potash, ammonia, lime in the entire world. And because of rise in the prices of the natural gas, there is rise in the prices of fertilizers, and whole of the agri-food sector is affected because of this. Thus both the global GDP growth and investment are coming down as a result of this war. That's all. If you liked our video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.